Na-na-na. The keys to your heart, and I will never be the same. It's hard to keep it straight because I'm not looking straight. And when I'm looking straight, I can't see the tie. I can't see what's happening. This is like a nightmare. This is like a never-ending nightmare.
La imagen por la cual vale la pena arriesgar la vida, sacrificarse hasta la muerte en los campos de batalla de todos los continentes del mundo.
Live from West Berlin, it's the committee program sponsored by Cadre Cigarettes, the national cigarette of Equatorial Fredonia, and starring Amanda Chaudhary, Julia Doubleday, Forrest, Lovette, Fiamma, Meli, Xhevat, Castrati, and yours truly, Jacopo, Castelletti. And now, from some sort of conference in Copenhagen, Amanda Chaudhary.
Oh, hi, Jacopo. I didn't see you there. I was just perusing this year's Democracy Perception Index. It is hot off the press, Democracy Alliance, and here in Copenhagen, they're certainly handing them out like speeding tickets. So if that's a thing that you were wondering if it was out, the answer is yes. Now, welcome to your committee program, and we have a really cool show lined up for you tonight. We will be connecting with a South African cabbie, with Trevor, as promised. My sister, Amanda Chaudhary, will be here. She is an incredible musician, a good person with good politics as well, and we enjoy that. And what else is happening? Oh, right. Yeah, well, look, there are municipal elections in Italy, and that is obviously something that we are very concerned about, and so Jacopo is on the case. He is in Liguria, which is where many of these things are happening this week, and as such, I am now going to be delivering our polling just as like a human person, not as a Jacopo polling channel graphic extravaganza. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a great show. We're going to have a good time, and on with the polling.
Ciao and welcome back to our polling update here at the Polling Channel, brought to you by the committee program.
Hi, and welcome to Committee Polling Channel. I'm your host, Amanda Chaudhary, and today we will begin in Peru with the CPI poll for the mayoral election in Lima. Conservative PP candidate Uresti clocks in at 29%, with Lopez Aliga from the right-wing RP coming closely behind at 26%. There's also a center-right candidate if conservative and right-wing aren't your thing. Yeah, it sounds like a tough town. I have actually never been. In Sweden, the Demoskop poll has Social Democrat Coalition and the right-wing moderate Swedish Democrat Kerfluffle. The moderates are the name of the right-wing party. The Swedish Democrats are the name of it. It's a whole thing. The Social Dems have 31%, with the moderates at 22%. The Swedish Dems are at 17%. The left is at 8%. It's going to be a real race. We're going to see this happening in the fall, I think. Sweden is at a very interesting place electorally, and a lot of the issues that I would say the Social Democrats have are very similar to the ones that Democrats have, with economically progressive and culturally progressive factions of the party interplaying in interesting ways. I think this is something that we should probably devote a whole segment to, because we have lots of friends of the show from Sweden. We work in Sweden, man. In Angola, for the Movimento Civico Mude poll, former CIA darlings UNITA have a firm lead over former ruling left party, the MPLA, at 54 to 34%. This looks unmovable and is, remarkable, because the MPLA has never lost an election. So this is a tough one. World Elects has a very tight race in Colombia in their second round of the presidential election set for June 19th, with Petro, our guy, at 47.8%, and Hernandez, their guy, at 47.1%. In the French legislative elections, we have a mess, and I don't know about these numbers, but Renaissance and Allies are at 28%, with a left-green alliance of NUPES at 25%. A scattering of other parties are in single and double digits. It's hard to know the methodology for a poll on an election like this, but we admire the moxie. We really do.
Committee, comitato, committed, committedo, carul, Committee, we young way, submitting, we committee.
Hey. 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 Hey, Amanda. Hey. 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 Over here. Hey. Hey. Hey.
Hey.
Hey. Hey, Amanda.
Hey.
It's good to see you. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm excited, Jason. I'm excited that you got in the spirit of it and you wear the hat. It feels a little like it's mocking me, but that's fine. I'm going to enjoy it in the spirit, maybe that it's not being offered in, and that's fine. But what I'm a little bit worried about is production. We are a kind of a bare bones show. Don't let my beautiful showcase here. Don't let the showroom kind of fool you. Sometimes Josh and Ray don't even have electricity. Sometimes they just play the drums. So supporting a lot of infrastructure, I'm seeing a lot of cameras, I'm seeing a lot of computers. It's a lot of production. I'm worried that it's very production heavy and that we can't support that kind of production. So what I'm concerned about is production.
Oh, okay. We do a lot of production here. That's kind of just.
I'm understanding that, and that I think is my main concern.
Okay.
Could you try less production?
We could try it. I think we could do less production.
We'll tone it down a couple notches.
Tone it down to just
I don't know if notch is a technical term, but I would say if we're at a 9 production, let's bring it down to a 6.5. Fair?
You do that
Gotcha.
and dial in 6.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for hearing me out on this.
La imagen por la cual vale la pena arriesgar la vida, sacrificarse hasta la muerte en los campos de batalla de todos los continentes del mundo.
And it's morning in Barrett's Circus. It's morning in Barrett's Circus.
¿Qué haces?
Aprende inglés con Inglés Junior. Mira lo divertido que es.
Inglés Junior, el curso de inglés que divierte, vuelve a partir del número 1. Cada semana un fascículo y cada 4 un cassette. Con la garantía Salva. Para ti, que te esfuerzas y pones la vida en acción.
Después de tu trabajo, falta morenita esa alegría reconfortándonos.
Esto es vida. Con la mejor cebada chilena, Malta Morenita, el momento más reconfortante.
Hi, welcome back to the committee program. I am your host, Amanda Chaudhary, and we have now a special segment, Another Calls with Cabbies, our sophomore effort after Slovenia, where we talk to cab drivers who are, you don't need to open a poll to know that actually as folks who are on the edge of kind of tech companies and entrepreneurialism and more traditional unionism and the gray economy and the gig economy, which is sort of the same way as saying tech, they are at the epicenter of this, and they also have people. They're talking to people all day, and that's why we get such valuable insights from cab drivers. And today, all the way from South Africa, calling into us in our West Berlin studios, we have Trevor Matebula, who is a cab driver in South Africa, and is going to tell us not just about the politics there, but also about some of the specific ways that tech is influencing the lives of labor in the country. Trevor, thank you so much for coming on, man. We appreciate you.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you doing?
So listen, you're driving all day, as I know from our text messages back and forth. You know, you are out there. What are some of the things that you hear from riders about South African politics generally? In the U.S., we will, of course, be very familiar with the end of apartheid and the rise of Congress, and then kind of some of the corruption accusations that have followed since then. But people will not know the day-to-day. What's your vantage point?
Yeah. I mean, look, right now, like a lot of people are just feeling, really, I'd say, disillusioned, because it's becoming very clear that, a lot of the things that we are going through are as a result of changes that are happening all around us, and even with what's happening with our industry in terms of like the gig economy and these apps, these are all just, I'd say birthing pains or, of what's coming,
Well, what do you mean by that? Like, what is coming, and how has this affected the kind of market? Like, we were talking earlier, and it's sort of, in some ways, South Africa is a laboratory for corporations to see how far they can push labor laws, in the same way that Chile was a kind of neoliberal playground. Like, what specifically do you see happening with what the company expectations of labor are, and how that's influencing all of South African labor, right? Is it a race to the bottom because these companies are pushing it? Or what is it like as a driver? What is your relationship like with the company, and how has that changed?
In order to understand South Africa, you have to put it into context, in terms of the history, because South Africa is a country that where in the past, I'd say 26 years, we've celebrated, our freedom, so to say, where things like, freedom of speech, the right to fair work conditions, the right to be represented, and all these things. These were supposed to be things that were supposed to be enshrined in our constitution, and these are the things that we celebrate, right? Now, when you take the context of all of that and what it took for people to achieve that, because a lot of battles were fought to get us to that position, and then now you have these tech companies that come into these countries, and what they do is they completely violate all of that simply by stating that because we are a tech company, we cannot be classified as your traditional employer. Just by that little technicality, they've now undone years worth of development, and progress. This is the sad thing about what these corporations are doing, essentially, because their business models are not geared towards, creating a sense of unity, building, trust, and and fostering good relationships and, prosperous relationships for everyone, If anything, I would say the stance of these corporations, based on what we've seen, not just in South Africa, but also what happens in the States, right? They are very capitalistic, capitalistically driven, They are driven by the desire to make profit, so much so that they are willing to sacrifice the very people upon whose backs that their entire industry was actually built by, and that's very saddening, and I know the part of the reason why they have this approach is because they spend a lot of money, developing technologies that are, geared towards automation, We all know that that's where this whole thing's going. That's where the future's going, automated cars, because I believe they will be safer on the roads than humans, because most of the time accidents apparently happen, because of humans, Even on this platforms like your Ubers and Bolts and whatever, right? What happened in South Africa is that because of how the earnings dropped for drivers on the platform, it became more and more difficult to make ends meet. So now as a driver, you end up having to clock more and more hours on the road just to try and make ends meet. And that obviously compromises your safety, your alert levels on the road, So we started to witness a surge in accidents as a result of driver fatigue and et cetera, And it got to the point where insurance companies even increased the premiums on Uber and Bolt vehicles, significantly, And yeah, you can imagine what this has, the kind of impact that this has on an industry. Yes,
Yeah.
vicious cycle.
No, it just has
vicious
a cycle, right? What were some, again, a race to the bottom. What were some of the more traditional labor protections that were in place in the taxi industry before Uber came in, and how
Is it just a question of classification, or have the companies been able to actually erode the South African law that regards these areas?
The biggest factor I would say was the pricing, right? Because South Africa had like a system that actually controlled what the minimum pricing was for a taxi operator, and obviously we all know that when Uber came into the country, they came in at a margin that was already significantly lower at a time where the meter taxi prices were actually even increasing, right? But not only did they come in at a lower price, they also kept that price very low in a country where 60% of what we pay in fuel goes towards taxes, right? So we even pay significantly more for fuel than our neighboring countries who actually buy their fuel from us, which is just ridiculous, really, and then now you have these apps that, keep the prices low because all they care about is taking over their share of the market, but now even when they do that, they have no vested interest in actually seeing you become a part of their progress at a future, date or whatever the case is, It's like you're being exploited, They are making you to work for peanuts, and then in the end of it, when they are done with you, they just discard you, block you off their platforms or do whatever the hell they like, There's no representation. No one is going to come in and say hey, look, you guys are wrong. You weren't supposed to deactivate these people, Labor law doesn't exist. Any form of labor law and representation doesn't exist,
And what are some efforts that people are doing to change that? We do know from our mutual friend Dejan Yefim in Slovenia that they put together kind of a new kind of a taxi union. We saw in America some Starbucks, some Amazon, some beginnings of more fringe workers putting together collective bargaining. Is there any equivalent in South Africa? What can you tell us about that?
Right, there are quite a few, but none are running at a national level, I would say, at the moment, right? Or running at a strong capacity on a national level that I've seen. But ultimately, I think South Africa is a very diverse place, right? Where I think people are starting to wake up now, People are starting to wake up. We are starting to see a lot of resistance in the sense that now people are realizing that hey, look, what these apps are doing is not right, People are sharing their stories online, they are communicating, and that is actually showing the need, for us to actually take charge of this thing, because the reality of it is that when companies operate in such a manner, they leave even the users exposed, They leave the users exposed because now as a user, you are at risk because of the environmental factors that are now being created for your operator. You understand? Because we've had cases of people claiming that their drivers attacked them, when meanwhile your driver could have actually been tied up in the trunk, simply because their vetting processes for consumers sometimes is not adequate, simply because they just want to collect every single penny off the streets, because their entire business model is just geared largely towards a capitalistic agenda, right? And there's really no sense of human touch, no human connection. Hence why even when something happens on these platforms, think about how long it takes for me in South Africa to be able to report an incident that happened, and then I have to see a message at the end of my reporting that I have to wait for 24 hours, to receive feedback. You understand? These cloud, based services, they are good, but they are good only this. There's only so much so that they can give you. At some point we have to recognize that there is a value, to the human touch that we cannot replace. And we need to respect that and honor that. by observing, even just regular practices and protocol that should adhere to any work environment, you understand, such as, like a need for safety, because we, in South Africa, we even had an incident recently where a driver ended up in an area where he was accused of being a kidnapper, right? When the story came out, it emerged that the guy was not even, a kidnapper. He was actually a driver who had a drop-off in an area, and then criminals took advantage, of the fears that were being generated in social media around, safety and kidnappings of, women and children, So he ended up, being attacked. Whereas what should have happened in that situation, he should have been able to identify himself and be recognized also by members of this community. You understand? But now these apps, the way that they are operating, they are creating situations where people, like, Uber drivers have made it okay for cars to just pull up randomly in your community, with like tinted windows and people sitting inside that you can't see, They've sort of made it okay for people to sort of accept this. And that's why I think some of these things are happening, because people are taking advantage of this, A car that doesn't belong, that's parked outside on your street, no longer looks out of place, because it looks like, oh, it's probably another Uber or another Bolt or another, whatever the case is, So as a result of this, you have unintended consequences, that are happening. And the only way that we can curb these things, because these corporations have no interest in even talking to us, right? And the only way that we can actually curb these things and take charge of the situation that's happening in front of us is by actually taking charge of this industry and actually developing our own apps through partnerships such as myself and the one that Dayan have, because his company was actually able to assist us in that regard, But yeah, so this is how we bridge the gap. This is how we bridge the gap, by not just laying back and saying, hey, we want to fight you, because at the end of the day, corporations will exist, right? But now let us put the people in charge of understanding what principles and ideals drive these corporations, And in order to do that, we have to establish our own that carry the ideals that we can identify with, and then let the customers choose. Let the customers be the ones that say like, hey, look, I don't believe in the ideals of A, B, C, D company, but however, I know that someone went out and, created a company that will represent the ideals that I believe in, and then let them support that, and I feel like this is what technology allows us to do, because we can now educate people. The fact that you and I can even have this conversation right now, that's quite amazing to me, because when you think about how far this can actually go, just in influencing even just thoughts, and how people think, so that when we've now established our local app here, when people come here, they won't be offended if their favorite apps that they may find overseas are not available, but however, they recognize that like, hey, in South Africa, we now have, a new app, and this app and this is what it represents, and they go and support that app, because they know that on this platform, they'll be part of a safer network, where there's like immediate, response to whatever's happening on the ground, because we are here. We make up like one of the best things I've ever seen is when drivers unite to protect each other. That when something is happening, a driver's being hijacked or he's being robbed or, he's being attacked, he has a group of people that he can go to and send a message in that group and say like, hey guys, come to this location, this is what's happening. And people would swoop in, and actually help him out, because this is what we all need. But now when you are working in isolation with these apps, right, you don't have any protocol like that unless if you create it yourself, unless if you make sure that you are a part of those groups, so yeah, so this is pretty much what I feel is the benefit or the upside to this whole thing.
Yeah, no, and you're right. I will say, like, for instance, in Ljubljana, when you land, you have a different app, you download it. It's not a big deal once you know that this is the equivalent of the app that you're familiar with. So I probably would broadly agree that breaking the monopoly on this is maybe the most important thing. But getting back to the raw politics of it, are there political allies, actually, elected officials in South Africa who you turn to, who people like you turn to get some political support on this? Or is there a political monopoly, which we've definitely seen in the U.S., that especially big tech companies are able to kind of maintain?
There definitely is a political monopoly, right? Even from the very establishing of these corporations in South Africa, right? The posture of everything, the deals and how they happen, like says it to you loud and clear, as an example, as a South African citizen, right, I need a special permit in order to operate in this particular business, right? And that permit, in the beginning, they made it very difficult for you to get a permit. I had to wait a total of 2 years, of applying, right, before I could get this permit. And Uber, upon arriving and operating, they were given 1,300 permits. You understand? They are not a citizen. They are not a natural citizen of the country, right? I do not know what classification allowed them to actually be able to get these permits, but that's something that shouldn't have happened, not without public, participation, because like now you've created this environment where now we don't even know how many permits they actually hold now, and even when I try to reach out to people and try to say like, hey, look guys, this is what's happening, in the political arena or whatever, the response that you get is pretty dry, because I feel as if the chips are basically in, those that know how to make, their ends meet off of this platform, they're doing so. And if you are not in those circles, don't disrupt this thing now. That's almost like the essence that you get. No one really has a vested interest in saying that, like, hey, look, what this guy's talking about is actually something real, because we live in a country where unemployment is rife, and we say that we want to fix things. But like, here's a corporation that's pumping out 120 billion rand plus out of this country's economy while paying no taxes, right? Why don't we take action and start correcting those things, Because that to me amounts to theft, That amounts to theft. It's theft that's happening via technology, yes, but Absolutely. It still amounts to theft. If you are doing business in my country and you are pumping out 120 billion and you're not paying any taxes, then the government should at least be doing something about that. You understand?
No, I mean, it's the equivalent of Coca-Cola, who so often go into a country with the expectation that they will get free water, which is 90% of their product. And it's just sort of the privileges afforded these corporations when they go overseas are things that people can only dream of. So it's not even that, we say the problem in the U.S. sometimes is that we treat corporations like people, but it's not. We treat them better than people. They have more privileges than people. They get to the front of every line.
Yeah,
and just leave us behind. Yeah, it's
what
it's
I was
horrible.
Going to say is that
can you?
This is something that I feel we need to sensitize the public to. Because if you look at what's happening as a whole, corporations are violating human rights, all over the world repeatedly. And we have become okay with that. We have literally become okay with it. And I think it's this culture that through the apps that we have and the investments that we have in our mobile apps and all these different things, platforms, right? We turn a blind eye because we actually do churn a profit, from the injustices of these corporations abroad, and there's really no willpower, because if I own stocks in Coca-Cola, why am I going to want to, do anything that's going to harm the stocks of Coca-Cola? But that's where they've gotten us to trade our souls, basically, because now you looking at the shoe on the wrong foot, basically. I don't know if that's even an expression. Yeah.
That is an expression, and it's one that fits here. And in fact, speaking of shoes on the wrong feet, we've seen over and over again many folks from our previous center-left administrations, whether that be the Clinton administration or the Obama administration, who should, we would think, be on the side of workers again and again, helping lead the efforts of companies like Uber and Lyft against their riders and against the public interest, even sort of, leading these preventing political reform in places like California. This was a particularly striking example. My last question to you is maybe a bit more hopeful, if it can be, but you'll tell me the truth on it. What are the kind of global efforts, global solidarity efforts that maybe can raise the awareness on this at a higher level? Because I think whether it is things like taxing corporations, et cetera, this is going to have to happen globally, or it's not going to happen at all, because there's always going to be a place for capital to hide money.
Look, I feel that right now there's a lot of technology that can allow us to bridge the gap, in terms of creating a global movement and awareness, right? Because by doing that, we actually land like a greater field of consciousness. You understand? That's why even this dialogue that we're having is very, very critical and very crucial, because now we are taking the conversation beyond the borders of South Africa. Now we're making this an international conversation. You understand? And I think once we start to do that, people will then develop a greater awareness of their own environments, especially when they see that these topics have the capacity to reach across borders. That's how serious they are. That's how much of an impact they have on our lives, So to me, it actually represents the birth of a new era. And I feel as if even the tech, companies and their posture, this is sort of, the one thing that they never want, for people to know that they are the power at the end of the day. We drive their engines, If all of us decide that based on a company's moral, irresponsibility, we are not going to support it, right? They will go down. They will go down. They will not have the luxury or the choice of saying like, hey, we don't accept your judgment, because once we make that judgment, they cannot exist, and we drive the culture, we drive the culture. So the more we support things that are, destructive, to society, the more we are just enabling our own demise, really, and it's about high time that people start to really think on a much more conscious level, like on a much more higher level of conscience, and actually say like, hey, look, what exactly am I doing on the daily? What is it that I'm contributing to, within my time on this planet, because that's how significant all of these things are.
I absolutely couldn't agree more, and I think that's a really nice note to end on. We all have to look, it's like you're saying, all of these sort of, all the mobile apps, everything that's in our life, it's essentially making everything in our life into hamburger meat, something that's incredibly satisfying, but we don't really know where it comes from or the process by which it gets to us. And we all just have to take a little more effort to look at where our transportation, energy, food, water, where all of these things come from. Because we
just
can,
something
as you
that
say,
I just want to add, right, is
just
that
by being conscious and mindful about it, be better.
That actually create the platforms that we need, because it is from these dialogues that we begin to recognize that, hey, these entities exist that represent the opposite ideals of what these other corporations are all about, and that's, something that you can make people aware of in their own physical space and how they can actually become part of that change,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Trevor Matabula, thank you for being with us. A driver, a photographer, an entrepreneur from South Africa. And listen, maybe it's okay if we check back in with you in a few months and we can hear how things are going. And maybe as elections come closer, you can give us some
most definitely.
Political, electoral insights, because that's what a lot of what we're hungry for.
La imagen por la cual vale la pena arriesgar la vida sacrificarse hasta la muerte.
And now, live from Cat Synth Studios in San Francisco, USA, my sister, Amanda Chaudhary. And I'm disclosing that relationship the same way I would like I'm a lobbyist or like I have a client or like the way I always do, because I think it's important to be transparent about these things. But it will be leading the committee orchestra in a song called Big Manule. Please take it away. Everyone, that's Amanda Chaudhary leading the committee orchestra with Big Manul. Listen, thanks so much for coming on. I'm hoping that we can actually keep you on, and for another segment we do a focus group where we get people to sort of tell us their different opinions on things, and knowing that you are at Cat Synth Studio, which is in the heart of San Francisco, which is close enough to Silicon Valley for our, global audience to feel included enough. We'd love your opinion because we want to talk a bit about Twitter and Elon Musk and other such unmentionables. So I hope that maybe you can stick around for that.
Yeah, we should be able to stick around for that. No problem.
Cool. And where can people find out more about Cat Synth, which is, tell us exactly what it is. It's also a YouTube channel. It's an identity. It's a lifestyle brand marketing scheme. It's, it's a dessert topping. It's everything.
Yeah. Well, yes, it is everything. It is a website. Started originally on a whim when a friend said, you should do something about cats and synthesizers because, you like cats and you like synthesizers. So we did that, and did that for years. Also did reviews, other articles, things like that, all written form. And then a few years ago decided to branch out into doing video too. So I started kind of almost sort of punk aesthetic style with just going to shows, taking the iPhone, maybe taking a light, taking a microphone, talking to people, cutting some footage of the show, running home, putting it up at night, and kind of just went from there, getting more elaborate, started doing demonstrations and very detailed tutorials about some of the equipment you see here at Cat Synth HQ. Also just other things that interest us, other music, 'cause we just love music in general, books, film, any cultural things we think about, bits of trivia, mathematics, cats, more cats.
Where can people find that, and where can people also find your different musical projects? You're in several different bands. Look, you're a musician in San Francisco, so you're in 30 bands, and they all have names that have 5 knit words in them. Yeah.
Yeah. So so you can find out you can find Cat Synth, all the things, including the dessert topping, at catsynth.com. You can go straight to the video channel at youtube.com/catsynth.tv, all one word. They don't really care about the capitalization, but it's capital C, capital S, TV, but they don't care.
In Germany we care, but otherwise
okay, yeah, no, I've heard that about Germany. They make a big deal about that, but not YouTube does not make such a big deal about that, I think, even in Germany, but I'm not sure. You can also find out a bit about music. I have a recent album out, so new albums, old albums at amandachaudhary.bandcamp.com. That's my main band, including a project that I've been doing called Meow Meow Band. More of a musical project than a band in the traditional sense of like getting in together and rehearsing and doing shows. It's a musical concept. I think people have heard of this thing.
I would definitely recommend that folks check out the Meow Meow Band. This last record is actually really good, and I enjoy it very much. And it was even a thing that I have on CD. So it is even a physical objet that if you go to amandachaudharybandcamp.com, you can find out more about how to get. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for agreeing to stick around, and thank you so much. Thanks so much for tuning into the committee program. We know you have many options when it comes to content consumption, and we appreciate your attention to this new season with new episodes on Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and at 10 p.m. Central European Time. You can support the show by becoming a member on patreon.com/the committee program. You can follow committee on Twitter, /committeepro, on YouTube, the committee program, on Instagram, the committee program, on Facebook, the committee program, and you can visit the committee program company store at tpublic.com, the committee program shop. Special thanks, as always, to our team, Xhevat Kastrati, Fiamma Meli, Jacopo Castelletti, Forrest, Lovette, and committee's deputy director, Julia Doubleday. Look alive out there. It's later than you think.
It's the end of our broadcast day. Thanks for listening. This was the 18th program in our second series. For more global infotainment from the committee program, click on the video screen right or screen left. Please like and subscribe to the committee program on Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern and 10